Hey guys, thanks for joining Learn to Play. My name is Lance, and today we're going to take a look at MegaCon's newest game, Recon. There's 2 core sets available. Each set comes with 2 complete different factions and everything else you need to play. This is a 1 to 5 player fully cooperative tactical strategy board game. It takes roughly an hour to an hour and a half to play depending upon the mission you choose. And in the game itself, you're taking on the role of an elite team of Mercs that's sent into a building to achieve different goals and mission objectives and to make it out of the building in time before the security level reaches too high and you get overwhelmed by the security force, which is controlled by the board itself. So there's a lot of interesting features to this game. You have to really manage your team well and decide when to attack and when to hold back and stay hidden and manage your security threat level. Other cool features of this game is if you're a fan of video games like Call of Duty or Modern Warfare, you know those scenes where you bust into the room and everything goes in slow motion. Well, they've kind of captured that in this board game with a little thing that you have to do, which is called a breach and clear, where you will break into a room and each of your mercs will get a single attack against the security force and they get to attack back, and whoever does the most damage at the end of the breach and clear is going to be the winner. So let's head to the table and I'll teach you how to play. Alright, so here's one of the Merc cards you can play as in the game. On the top here, it's going to list the role that that particular Merc has, so this is our leader. Then we have their priority and what corporation they're affiliated with. Then each particular Merc has its own personal ability and the corporation ability, so for the CCC, all of them have the same corporate ability. In the top corner here, we have the amount of armor that particular Merc has. And when they interrogate, this is the cost and the dice that they'll throw. So some Mercs are better than others at interrogation. Then we have reserve actions, which we'll get into more later, but you have 2 choices. Over here, you have his combat abilities. So it lists the weapon he has and the range, and then the 2 different types of attacks he can perform with it, their cost, and the dice that you throw for those. And then each Merc has their own special breach and clear, which we'll cover more later. And then their secondary weapon, which gives you some details about that particular weapon. Then you have their hit points and the amount of attacks that they can do before they have to reload. And then you have their command points, which will allow you to do different actions during the game. So there's 4 tokens you have to put onto their cards at the beginning of the game. The first one is the blood token, which will start on the very end. You have their CP token, which will start on the 6th spot. Their ammo token, which starts in the far ends for attacks. And their reserve token, which will denote which reserve action you choose when you purchase those. Alright, so let's go ahead and take a look at setup. So the first thing you're going to do is lay out your border. And then on each corner you're going to have one of the 4 tracks. So I have the security track and the reinforcement track. And then on the bottom here I have the casualty pool and the priority track. It doesn't really matter where you place those. I would do it however it works best for you in your layout. The other thing you want to keep in mind is that on each side you're going to have the yellow square either with a black symbol in it or the blank symbol. You want to make sure that those correspond. So like the left and right can have the black and the top and bottom can have the blank, or whichever way you prefer. Alright, so here we have an example of one of the tiles you'll be playing on. And each area is going to be separated with walls, potentially, that are the dark lines. You also have doorways that lead into the different areas. And each square is considered one area for movement, which will have both an orange and a white circle, which will help you when you're moving your agents around, which I'll go into more detail later. And each square has a number of symbols as well, which the first one is the shield, which is the amount of extra armor that that area provides to both Mercs and OPFOR. Then you have the gear symbol, which is the amount of models that can occupy this space at any one time, both Mercs and OPFOR again. On the bottom corner you're going to have the blood drop, which is the amount of damage that this collateral damage that this area can take before you add a damage token to it. And then during setup, you're going to go through your board and check to see if each of your areas has any dots in it, which there's 3 different colors There's blue, red, and black. If it has a dot, then you would place an agent disc of that color in that square. Alright, so now that we've taken a closer look at an individual tile, now it's time to create our building. So we have a couple of options. MegaCon has a number of different building layouts on their website, and I've gone ahead and used the one that's in the book, or you can create your own. If you choose to create your own, there's 3 important rules that you must follow, which I've listed here. And once you've done with that, as we've talked about on the individual tile, we're going to go ahead and place our agent discs in each one of the colored zones that has a colored dot on it. Alright, so now that we have all of our agent discs in their proper locations, the next thing we're going to do is to draw a random mission card. So we have get some rack time, and our objective with this is to locate and destroy the weapon rack. So then we need to check the special rules to see if there's anything else we need to set up. So this also tells us our insertion point, which is the elevator at the bottom. And then we have to mix up the weapon rack objective with 3 other objective markers randomly and place them in 4 different named areas. So we grab our green tokens, one of them is the weapon rack, shuffle them up and then place them in any named room. So we'll put one in the biolab, one in interrogation, one in the storage room, and the last in the conference room in the bottom. Alright, so next we're going to place the security track token on the 0 spot of the security track, and then we need to address the priority track. So with each of our mercs we have a number in the upper left corner, and that's where we'll place their token, their merc token that'll mark them on their priority track. So our leader is gray, and so he is in the number 3 slot. Then we have our demo and our breacher, both are 2s, and then our incinerator and our gunner are both 1s, so we'll place those there. From there, then each one of our characters will be assigned a yellow number based on the priority track. So our leader would get the number 1 since he's the highest priority. After that, if any mercs are tied, then you would choose the order that they go in. So either the demo could be 2nd or 3rd on that track, and then the incinerator and the gunner would choose between the 4 and 5 slots. Once we're done with that, then we can place our mercs in the elevator in whichever space we choose. Alright, so Mercs Recon is broken down into a number of rounds, and each round consists of 4 different phases. The first phase is the agent phase, the second phase is the OPFOR phase, the third phase is the Mercs phase, and the final phase is the refresh phase. Each turn we'll go through each one of these phases, and it'll keep going in this way until the game is over. Alright, so now we're ready to move into the agent phase. At the beginning of the phase, you're going to go ahead and draw an agent movement card, and starting at the top of the card and working your way down, you resolve each step of it. So at the top of ours, it says for each red agent disc that moves within line of sight, place 1 black agent disc in the stairs furthest from a merc. So with all of our mercs in the elevator this turn, we don't have to worry about them any red discs moving in line of sight, so we're okay there. Moving down from there, it says the blue agent discs move 1 area towards orange. So in Recon, all of our agent discs move orthogonally. There is no diagonal movement at all. And then as I talked about earlier with the tiles, each area has a half of an orange circle and a half a white circle. And this will be used to determine its movement. So with the blue disc, it's going to move 1 area towards orange, so it can either go down the hallway or into the room. So when you have 2 different options that can be viable, you're going to go ahead and roll 1 yellow dice and consult your frame, and you'll have the different symbols on there. So with a blank, it's going to move down into the office as we are shown here. With our next blue, we have 2 choices again, both hallways, and again it's going to move down. Over here, this section is a wall with the orange side, so its only option is to move up, so we don't need to roll a dice. And then from there you would just continue working your way through the rest of the blues on the board, and then the same for the red and the black. Finally, with the security level penalty, you'll read that statement, and if it's true, then you'll apply its effects. The other things I'd like to cover with the agent discs are, if an agent disc is told to move out of a room into a space that has a Merc, it will not. Agent discs will never move into the same space as a Merc, and so in that situation it would just stay in the room. And the other thing is if an agent disc moves into line of sight of a Merc, even if it has additional movement that would take it out of line of sight, it would stop and not move anymore. And then at the end of the turn, if there are any agent discs in line of sight, then you would draw an event card, and then we would consult the security level, which right now we're at security level 1. So on the security level 1, each disc that's in line of sight would get replaced with an OPFOR of that type. So the red would get replaced with a scientist, and the black would be replaced with an administrator. And those tokens would be removed from the board. So with line of sight, you're always going to measure it orthogonally. There is no diagonal with line of sight. The second thing is that no matter where the model is positioned in the square, that has no relevance on determining line of sight. Line of sight is drawn from one complete square to another complete square. Models do not block that line of sight. The only things that do would be doorways, because they're always considered to be closed, and then obviously rooms that would separate hallways and things will block line of sight as well. So if we look at a couple examples real quick, the Mercs here can see the Security Force 3 guy because they have line of sight to him, and they can also see the Security Force 2 guy. Now there's another thing that will change that is the range of the weapon can only shoot so far. So even if you can draw line of sight to the person, you still might not be able to shoot them if you don't have range with your weapon. Alright, so now we're ready to move into the OPFOR phase. And OPFOR stands for opposing force, which is everything in the building other than the agent discs and our 5 Mercs. So in this phase, the OPFOR are going to move and attack in a specific order, starting with security level 4 and working our way down to security level 1. And then finally, the employees, which have their own set of rules, which we'll cover in a little bit. With combat, it's going to work the same way for the OPFOR as it does the Mercs, so we'll cover that in the combat section. But they do have a different way of targeting. So let's go ahead and take a look at that now. So our security level 3 guy up here in the corner is going to be the first one to go this turn, since he's the highest out there at this point. So as you can see on his card, at the bottom it says that he's going to move to the highest armored area to attack, which right now all of the areas are the same armors that have line of sight to our Mercs. So he won't need to move. From there, then with combining his movement value of 2 and his weapon's range, he's going to consult the priority track and targets the highest level priority Merc that he has range to on that track, which is our leader. He's 2 spaces away, so he has line of sight and he has range to him. So from there, then he would perform his attack. Once his attack is done, then we would move to the next security force, which is our level 2 guy down here in the corner. And you would do the same thing. Now there's a couple things to keep in mind. They will always target the highest priority Merc that they have range to, even if they're in the same space as other Mercs, or they have to shoot through or move to actually target that Merc. Alright, so now we're going to look at the rules that govern employees. So for this example, I'm going to go ahead and put out an administrator as well. And so the first thing we need to do at the beginning of the OPFOR phase, before we do anything else, is to determine if, when our employees activate, if they'll move. So in order to do this, we calculate the number of OPFORs that are in line of sight to our employee versus the number of Mercs that are in line of sight. So for our administrator, we have 2 security force that are in line of sight to her. So we have 2, and then we have 3 Mercs. So when she activates, she will not move. She's going to cower. But when our worker activates, he won't. He will go ahead and move because he doesn't have line of sight to any of them, and is only determined at the beginning of the OPFOR phase. From there, there's a couple other rules. So with employees, they're not going to move into an area that has Mercs, and if they're in an area that has Mercs, they will move out of it unless they're cowering already. The employee's goal is to make it to the closest set of stairs, and if they reach the stairs, then they will leave and would be moved to the casualty pool. and then when an employee is on the run, they're going to try to get out of line of sight of the Mercs, and if that means going into a room, then they will do that. Now, killing any kind of employee earns the attacking Merc an employee KI penalty token, which we'll cover a little bit more later in the refresh phase. Alright, so now we're ready to head into the Mercs phase. During the Mercs phase, each Merc will activate in order based on their number that was assigned to them. So starting with our leader, since he is the first one to go, he can spend his command points to do various actions. When he's either out of command points or he chooses not to perform any more actions, then his turn would be over, and we would move to the next Merc in the priority line. I'm not going to go over all the actions in this video, but as you can see on this guide, this quick reference guide, which is on the back of the rulebook, each action has a cost in CP associated with it, and there's 5 different sets of actions. You have normal actions, which cover a lot of your basics. You have movement actions, which will allow your Mercs to move around. You have ranged and melee combat actions, which I'm going to cover more in the combat section. You have reserve actions, and with reserve actions, you would spend the CP that is associated with that action during your turn, and then you would mark it with the marker. So with the reserve actions, what that allows you to do is during the OPFOR phase, when they activate, before the OPFOR attacks, so as soon as an OPFOR would move into range, based on the action that you choose, then you would get to attack against them before they attack you. When you do that, you'd have to spend an ammo token, so you must have ammo in order to do it, but you've already spent your command points in this turn, so you would not have to spend those, and then you would move that token away again, because you can only use that once for a reserve action, and then it would return to the OPFOR's turn. And then the last type of action are the combined actions, which will allow multiple Mercs to perform actions together, and this is also a good way to activate Mercs out of their sequence. So if, say, our leader did a combined action with the Incinerator, who is the last one to go in the Merc's turn, he would be able to do something with him to maybe put the Incinerator in a better position, and then the Incinerator could do more stuff during his activation. Alright, so now we're ready to head into the refresh phase. And so during the refresh phase, the first thing we're going to do is reset the priority. So with each one of our Mercs, we're going to go ahead and check on the command points line. Underneath the command point token, there's going to be a little circle next to the number, and that's going to be the modifier to our priority track. So with our leader, he is +1, since he's on 2. So he'll move his token up on the priority track by 1. And then we would move it up an additional 1 point if he would have earned a employee KIA token, which you can only earn 1 during a turn, or an excessive force token, which you can also only earn 1. He didn't, so we don't have to worry about those. From there, then each Merc will regain 4 command points back on their track, unless they've taken enough wounds to decrease that amount by the 2 spots that they have. Our leader hasn't taken any damage, so he gets his 4 CP back. Alright, so next we're going to see if we increase the security level. So the first thing we're going to do is consult the casualty pool, and we're going to look for the increased security level token. If that token is there, then we've already increased the security level this turn, and so nothing else would go on. But let's go ahead and say, for example, that we did not have that token there. Then we roll for each casualty on that pool based on this chart here. So the worker would receive 1 black dice, and the security level 2 would get a yellow. And we would roll those, and for each burst that we rolled, we would move our token up 1 number, up to a maximum of 1 security level. So if we would roll both bursts, then we would moved it to a 4, which would have been security level 3. But if we would have rolled 3 or more dice that had more bursts, we would have stopped on the 4 and not moved it up any further. Alright, so the last part of the refresh phase is the status effects. And at this point, the players are going to check to see if any status effects need to be cleared. And then the last thing that I'd like to go over real quick are the burn tokens. So when a burn token is on a space, due to all kinds of different things that would cause it, It's going to stay on that space until it does enough damage to replace that space with a collateral damage token. But before it does that, it's also going to have a chance to spread to orthogonal spaces that it's next to. And so for each one of those spaces, you would roll a black dice, and if it rolls a burst, then you would add a token to that space for each burst that you roll. Alright, so now we're going to take a closer look at combat. And combat works the same way for both the Mercs and the security force. The only difference is with the security force, they have their own way of targeting specific Mercs with the priority track that we've already talked about. So for this example, I'm going to throw out some OPFORs, and the reason I chose these is because it's easier for you guys to identify them versus the unpainted models. So this way then you can see exactly what's out there. So once we do that, we have to determine line of sight, which, as we've talked about earlier, we can see everything in front of us. From there, then the active Merc, which is our leader right now, is going to choose which attack he's going to perform. And he has a range of 3 areas with his guns, so we've got plenty of range. So he's got 2 types of attacks. He's got a sweeping attack, which will target one area and have a potential to do damage to all the targets in that area, plus a potential to do damage to the area itself, which would cause it to have a damage token placed on it. The other type of attack we can do is a focused attack, which will pick one model and only target that model. Now, one thing to keep in mind with either one of these attacks that he chooses, if there are any targets between him and his target space, those are considered collateral targets and have a potential of taking damage from him shooting through them. So anytime you perform an attack like that, you would roll 1 black dice. If you roll a shield, then that's whatever models in there would take a wound, and that includes friendly models. So if you're shooting through other Mercs, they have a chance of taking damage. And it goes in order, so even if we were targeting this guy and this guy was here as well, he would get a dice as well. So let's go ahead and do a sweeping attack. And with a sweeping attack, it costs 1 command point, and we're going to use 1 ammo token. And then we can go ahead and grab our dice. And then we'll put 1 dice here for her. So with the sweeping attack, we choose one of the 2 guys in that space to be the primary target. So we'll go ahead and target the Sec 2. Alright, so the yellow and the red dice will only target him. The black dice will go to the security force 1 guy, and it will target the area itself. So with the security force 2 guy, we did 4 wounds, because this red counts as 2, because it's the double burst side. I know the dice are a little weird. He has 3 wounds and 1 armor, so even if he rolled his armor successfully, he would still die. So he goes to the casualty pool. And then our security force 1 guy has no armor, so he's just going to take a wound. So we can go ahead and put a wound token out there. And then the area will get replaced after all that's done. So he would not benefit from the armor that's on this token. And then last, let's go ahead and roll to see if that worker took anything. And she did not. She rolled a blank, so she's okay. Alright, so continuing from our example earlier, let's go ahead and take out the security force 1 guy. So with our leader, let's go ahead and spend another command point to move him up so we don't have to worry about wounding this worker. And then let's go ahead and talk about the damage tokens real quick. So in order to flip over a damage token, I would have to do 2 wounds to it in one go, 1 attack. So when we come to choosing which attack to do again, we can go with the sweeping attack because it's cheaper, and it's only rolling 1 black dice, so there's no way that it's going to cause enough damage in one go to flip that tile over. So it's the safer bet. So let's go ahead and spend our 1 command point and 1 more ammo token, so go ahead and do that. We'll go ahead and roll our dice again. Alright, and so we do 2 damage to him. And with the Security Force 1, they only have 2 health, and he's already taken 1. So he would get an armor save, so he could roll 1 black dice. But even if he rolls a shield, he's still taking 1 damage, which would still be enough to kill him. So we'll remove him and put him in the casualty pool. And since our leader is attacked twice this turn, he would receive an excessive force token. Alright, so the last thing we're going to cover is a breach and clear. So in order to do a breach and clear action, the first thing you need to do is have 3 mercs in a space that's adjacent to the space you're trying to do a breach and clear on. And between the 3 of them, they have to spend 7 command points, and each one has to spend at least 1 command point. Now, some of your team may have abilities to decrease that or to do different things to aid in a breach and clear. So make sure you check over your Merc cards, determine what those benefits are. So once they've spent their command points, then they're going to move into the breach and clear, which is a special tile, which I'll set up in a second. And any models that are adjacent to the mercs that are doing the breach and clear will be pulled in with them. So any mercs that are adjacent to them, or if there's OPFOR security force in there, they'll get pulled in as well, as long as they're in an adjacent space to the mercs that are doing the breach and clear. Alright, so now we're ready to take a look at a breach and clear setup. So the first thing you're going to do is pick a breach and clear tile. Each core set comes with a double-sided tile, so you're going to pick which side you're going to play on. And each tile has its own special rules, so make sure you're familiar with those. Then you're going to put out the counter tokens, 1 for collateral damage, 1 for the OPFOR score, and 1 for the Merc score. From there, then you're going to go ahead and populate the Merc section with the Mercs, starting with the highest priority in M1, and working our way down. From here, if it's a non-objective based breach and clear, so if you just entered a room that has an agent or an OPFOR, then you would follow the standard non-objective breach and clear as shown here, and you would just put any figures in these spaces based on the mission that you're playing, if it's non-objective based or objective based. So with our mission, ours is objective based, and it says that we fill all the tiles, including the one with the objective, which is at the very top. And it doesn't matter what figures you put in here, they don't get their own specific attacks. It's all done as a group. So figures are not important. So just put ones in that look cool. And then we're ready to start. Alright, so let's take a look at some of the details of the board. So on this side here you have the collateral damage track that's going to track how much damage you do to the tile. If you reach 5, then you'd have to put a collateral damage token down after the breach and clear is resolved in the room that you breached and cleared. And if you reach 10, then you've destroyed the objective. In some missions that's required, and in other ones that'll constitute a fail. On your other side you have your score tracks for both the Mercs and the security force, so as they do damage to each other, those will move up. And then last you have the blood icons, which is going to be for as the security force do damage at the end of the breach and clear. That's how many damage points they do to each Merc that was involved in the breach and clear. The Mercs will get their defensive soak rolls though. And then as you can see, there's the 3 different colors for the different positions that the security force is in, and that's how many dice they will get. So each position the security force is on will get that color dice when they make their attack. Alright, so now we're ready to look at a combat example. In a breach and clear, each Merc is going to get to attack 1 time with their lowest CP attack. They don't have to spend CP in the breach and clear because they've already spent it to initiate it. They do have to have ammo slots left though. If they don't have any ammo, then they cannot attack. And then last, each character has their own special breach and clear ability as well, so make sure you're aware of that. So with our leader, he gets to do his sweeping attack, which is 1 red, 3 yellows, and a black. But his special breach and clear ability is that he can convert 1 red to an auto damage. So let's go ahead and do that, since we do need to do destroy the objective with this one, as you can see on our mission card. And then we automatically move their track up by 1. And then we will go ahead and roll, and he rolls 1 more damage. So he'll move that up. And so the Mercs have done a total of 2 damage, and the first security force is on 2, so he is killed and removed. He does not go to the casualty pool. He just gets removed completely. And then next, it's going to be the OPFOR's turn to go back. So with the OPFOR, the type of figures in the spaces don't matter. It's just that the figures are occupying spaces. So we have one guy in black, we have 4 guys in yellow, and 3 guys in red, including the objectives. So then we'll roll those. And we've rolled 3 successful bursts, so the OPFORs will move up to 3. And then we go back to the Mercs. So it would be the next guy in the row would be the demo guy. And so then he would do his attack, and this will go back and forth until all the Mercs have gone. When that's done, if the Mercs have had a higher death toll, then the security force and the Mercs have won. Unless there's other objectives that you need to do. So like in our mission, we had to destroy the objective. So if we had not, at the end of the breach and clear, destroyed this objective, then we would have lost the breach and clear and failed the mission.